Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this leadership episode of 30 Minutes to President's Club. My name is Armand Farouk, and I'm here with my co-host, Nick Cegelski. We have a round two with the guy who comes from two of the baddest coaching family trees you could imagine, coached by both Mark Cosaglo, Kevin Dorsey. It is the one and only Sean Gentry for a round two, and holy smokes, is it obvious that this guy has become a sales leader from the best. He is a senior manager of corporate sales at WebFlow. Nick, why should people listen?
Sean has some really practical things in terms of coaching reps to look out for risk and friction in deals, and he's got some extremely regimented, particular ways that he pulls that out from reps in multiple different places in how he works with them. Everything from how he has them manage the CRM and the data that's in there and the format of it, to how he's role-playing on one-on-ones, to questions that he is asking by stage of deals in pipe reviews. And so this was a really, really good one if you are looking to help improve the way that you work with your reps.
And 3, 2, 1, let's roll. Sean, back to the show. We start every leadership show with your top 3 actionable takeaways. Let's get your 3.
All right. First, I've got the CYS. This is the Call Your Shot meeting. So every single Monday morning, I tap one of my reps to tee up. It's a peer-led meeting instead of me just, spitting some housekeeping facts about the company. They're going to tap every single one of their peer AEs to call their shot for that week. So whether it's, book 2 meetings with new prospects, whether it's to find 5 new outbound accounts, whether it's, getting that CFO on that value pricing call on Thursday, they're calling their shot. We're checking in midweek. And then on our team meeting on Friday, we're getting together to celebrate those incremental wins, to stack them up month over month, quarter over quarter, to help them improve, get their number.
Boom. What's number 2?
All right. So number 2 is the PTQ, is the path to quota. So in my last 2 shops, Outreach and WebFlow, the top performers have always known their path to quota. So they enter every single quarter with what they have in their pipeline. It's normally color coded, red, yellow, green. They've got a commit, most likely, best case. They understand the risk. And then they shoot for a pipeline goal, whether that's 3.5 or 4x. And then through the month, they're tracking essentially their path to quotas. What do they have closed won? What is their quota? What are they pacing towards? What do they need to create in their pipeline to get back to that 4x number? And they're keeping track of this every single week so that in our one-on-ones, when we meet, we can make sure, are they on pace? Are they on target? Are they behind?
PTTT, path to takeaway.
I love it. It's the full acronym episode. This is the NCWF. This is my favorite acronym. It's no commission without friction. So every single deal is going to have friction. I don't care how smooth it's running. You're going to hit friction around pricing, around red lines, around procurement, around involving a different department. Maybe you're going to get 3 or 4 C-level execs to have eyes on this proposal. There's going to be friction. No deal is that smooth. So going into every single one-on-one deal inspection review, when I'm talking to my reps, that is my first question. Where are you hitting friction if you haven't already? It gets them in the mindset to see that potential risk is coming and then train them to get ahead of it every single time.
So talk to me about what that conversation looks like. You're on a one-on-one or you're on a pipe review with your rep and you're talking about a deal. What are some of the common areas? And you can use WebFlow, you could use Outreach. You mentioned like pricing. You mentioned, we need to get other departments involved. What are some of the common areas you will coach them to look for friction or risk in the deal?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's interesting about a SaaS market now, especially compared to a couple years ago, if I take Outreach, for example, pre-COVID, Outreach was selling a sales product to salespeople. That's what it was geared for. Now, with all the different products and multi-services that they offer, sales has eyes on it, but it's also being used by customer success. It's being used by marketing, right? And now to be a successful SaaS product, they have to be multi-pronged in their approach. And so inevitably, when I'm working with one of my reps and they're only targeting or working with one department, that's what I'm asking them. Like, does engineering have eyes on this? Does their security team or their legal team have eyes on this yet? Because that's where friction is going to occur. Right? If you don't have multiple people involved in this or part of that decision-making process, when that proposal hits their desk and they don't know anything about the product or the problems that we solve, friction is going to occur. So in WebFlow specifically, like, we are very marketing heavy. We work with a lot of VPs, CMOs of marketing. But if we don't have engineering as a part of that conversation, even halfway through on a demo or technical evaluation, I know that we're going to hit friction towards the end. Usually I'm always curious with the rep, is this an initiative that was brought on due to like an executive measure within the business where multiple departments are aware of it? Or is this something that, let's say, marketing has sought to look out for themselves because of a problem they have and it's siloed, and then they're going to bring it to the business at the end? Go seek out this product and, bring me the pricing quote. It's rarely that case, and more often the latter, where marketing's got a problem, they find it out, and then they take it to the CEO to present towards the end. So when I'm working with my rep, I always want to understand, like, where are they in the process in terms of who is involved or who's aware of this. But if engineering is not involved, which we know is a big factor in determining like a website shift, right? And who's going to be doing a lot of this resourcing, then I'm tasking my reps to pull up those people in engineering on LinkedIn, on Zoom Info, and approaching the people in marketing with, hey, is Carol part of this decision? Is Jessica involved in this? Are they aware of this? Are they experiencing any of the flack that you're seeing in marketing? What does that relationship look like? Because if they don't have some of those answers right now, it's on us to proactively approach our buyers with that and get past that hurdle sooner than later. Like, we want to get ahead of that potential objection, because I've been there in that seat, towards the end where we present that proposal and come back and say, oh, engineering doesn't want to change their workflow. We're going to stick with status quo.
You talk about this engineering risk in a deal. My guess is at different stages of a deal, there are different common risks. And in your head, you probably have 30 or 40 blind spots that could be happening in any given deal. How do you know which ones to point out to your reps at what time?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes to exit criteria for the deal itself. Like, you want to know in a general sense, whether it's discovery or demo, what the rep should know or be walking away with. If you go on LinkedIn now, you see people talking about multi-threading all the time. It's a huge aspect, and you need strong multi-threading to get deals through in this climate. But it's hard to sell other departments if the people you're talking to aren't sold, right? And so one of the things that normally is best, in my opinion, is if you're working through like discovery and demo, and let's say I'm working with a marketing department, I need to ensure that not only do we solve their problem, but they believe that we are the vendor of choice before they start looping in other departments. And so through that, I imagine it as if we're sitting on two opposite sides of the table, right? If Armand, I'm selling to you, we're sitting on opposite sides of the table, and I finally get to demo you, I get to go through a technical evaluation, and I ask you that question of, hey, if this was solely up to you, pricing aside, do you believe that we're the right fit moving forward? Do you believe this is a partnership that you would buy? And if you give me anything other than a resounding yes, I need to back up, right? I need to figure out what I missed or why we aren't aligned. But if you say, yes, Sean, this is awesome, I love this, it's like you kind of moved your seat to the other side of the table when we're sitting together. And now your whole company opens up, and I get to ask you, like, hey, I know Jessica from engineering, they normally work with marketing on the website. How does Carol think about this, your CMO? And I'm using you as that champion, that guide to kind of help me, to quarterback me basically through the company and get to the next people. But I need you sold first.
That's the key right there, is the risks are the risks associated with achieving the exit criteria for that stage. So oftentimes managers will actually try to de-risk everything that could happen in a deal in the next 4 stages. But to your point, if you're in the discovery stage, do you have a real problem with a real champion? And most of your questions are around that. But if you're in the multi-threading phase, the questions you're going to be asking are you having all the right people involved? Or does Power really give a damn about that problem? So all you have to do is just figure out, have a list of common things that blow up deals in this stage, and put those in public forum for your reps and ask them questions about it.
Well, I want to ask you about deal reviews, because Armand, you just talked about from the sales leader's perspective, like, hey, here's the questions you should be asking, risks associated with stage. Sean, when you're working with new reps who come on your team who might not have worked with you before, how do you teach them to talk about their deals? What are the things that you tell them they need to be looking out for and communicating up to you? Because my guess is you're not saying share every single last detail from like, oh, this person also has a lake house in Wisconsin and they're really like, I imagine you're giving them some coaching in terms of what you want them to be communicating and how they communicate it to you.
I think part of like setting the expectations up front is huge from a leader, especially going into these one-on-ones, and how you're going to not only inspect the deals, but how you're going to coach them. And the key things that I tell every single one of my reps is that showing up to, let's say, a forecast or deal review, they have to have their pipeline and Salesforce clean and up to date. It's just a set expectation for me that if things are not dialed and up to date, I'll cancel the meeting or reschedule it. because I don't want to spend the 30 or 45 minutes I have with my reps going through and doing housekeeping under deals. So I would say like, hey, we're going to push this meeting to tomorrow. When we show up tomorrow, I want everything clean. And what that actually means is I want the ARR and close dates up to date. But most importantly, my next step fields, I'm very particular with my reps. And they need a couple things in every single thing. Number one is the date that the next step is being entered. So today, let's say it'd be, July 24th. That's the first thing. And then the next thing is it needs to have their tactical next step. And I think this is the biggest difference, and where most either sales managers or most AEs miss the boat, is that more often than not, it's a status update, right? Like waiting for Bob to return the contract is not a next step, right? Carol's going to get back to me with times. That's not a next step. That's a story, right? That's a status update. So I want to know what my rep is doing next. If they're waiting for Bob to get the contract to them, are they calling Bob at Wednesday at 3 p.m. to ensure that everything is signed, right? So what is their exact next step? So when I go into every single forecast review, I can look at, SuperBiz is the first title, let's say the first deal they're working. And I go through very quickly to say, hey, Nick, it looks like you've got SuperBiz forecasted for July 31st at $50,000. Are those things still accurate? And you can say, yes, they are. And I say, great. It looks like your next step is to call Bob at 3 p.m. to ensure he's got the DocuSign in hand. And the goal is to get that signed by Thursday morning. Let's prepare for if Bob doesn't answer, what is your next step, right? Do you have what I believe to be the right next step? Or can we game plan if that goes sideways, or is there risk involved? And so it's really setting the expectation with the rep and then having basically like a format that you can go through with every single one of your reps to ensure that you are doing it the right way and then they're doing it the right way.
Leaders today are terrified to do things like ask their rep to make a certain number of dials every week, or ask people to update Salesforce and keep their pipeline up to date, so that we don't talk about, have you talked to this opportunity in the last 7 months? And instead we just talk about, great, let's talk about how to drive these deals forward. The reason you keep pipeline clean is so you don't have to waste time talking to each other about pipeline janitorial exercises. And so, Sean, you have a clean pipeline. All the next steps are up to date. You have all the dates of the next actions, what the goal is. How do you decide which deals you're going to dig into?
Yeah. So every single time I start a forecast review, I start with the highest ARR activity or opportunity first, every single time. So I don't care if you have SuperBiz, let's say, and it's $150,000, but it's slated to close in January. What happens more often than not is that managers only focus about what's in front of them. So they'll focus on the July deals, the August deals, the September deals. And you've got this huge opportunity that, let's say, can hit your entire number in one deal, but it's slated for January. It either gets not brought up into the filtered view of Salesforce or Clary, whatever you use, or you're simply not going to talk about it. And I believe that deals don't necessarily die due to timing. They do to lack of momentum, right? And so even if you have this deal that's out in January, what is the rep doing to continue to nurture, to drive other people into the conversations? And we're going to talk about that at the top of every meeting, right? So even if it is slated for January, and let's say we're focused on ending, July strong, you still got SuperBiz slated for January. It looks like your next step is that in 2 weeks, you're sending Carol this new information about a product we're launching and hoping to get a response. Is that still accurate? Great. It can take 10 seconds, but then we're topping on the top ARR activities every single time, so that we're going to get to the July deals, the August deals as they're filtered in there. But I want to make sure that we're continuing to drive momentum with the deal that's going to make the biggest headway for our company.
Sean, one thing that I struggled with a lot was if a deal made it to proposal phase, there wasn't a lot to talk about. Like, I knew if we got it there past multi-threading, most of my reps knew what to do. The hardest part was actually inspecting the top of funnel deals, the stage 1 and the stage 2 deals, because that's where most deals are lost. Most deals are lost when you can't find a problem in the first place. And the reps who are good are the ones who are getting those deals to stages 3 and 4 in the first place. So if I'm dealing with 20 opportunities in stage 1, how do I inspect the stage 1 opportunities without literally going through every single meeting my reps have had one by one?
Yeah. So in stage 1, stage 2, like whether it's pre-discovery or call it post-discovery, I'm always doing initial research. Like, I want to do a quick pulse check. If, let's say, my rep gets a brand new account, I'm always quick to check out what competitor are they on? Are they on WordPress? Are they on Contentful? Are they on Sitecore? Who are they using? Who are we talking to? Are we talking to the right persona that fits into our normal use case? And then what size of company? It's also crucial for us. Like I work in the corporate space. Our reps work 200 to 2,500 accounts, but our bread and butter is between 200 and 1,000. That's where we close the most deals. So if I get somebody that's 300 employees, I'm already starting to think about different levels of risk than somebody that's at a 600 employee count. So that's part of the pre-research that I'm making sure that my reps do. Post-discovery, and you already mentioned it, I want to know really three things. Number one is, do we know that they have a problem? That's usually pretty easy for an AE who's doing this all the time to suss out. The number two one is, do they know how they have a problem, right? Have they admitted they have a problem, which inbound, you're going to get much easier than an outbound activity. And then the third thing is, are they willing to go on a journey with us to solve it? And that usually is the biggest kicker, that we'll get through a proposal and our AEs will say like, oh, I know they have this problem, but if they're not willing to go on the journey with us to solve it, we're screwed. We're not going to get that deal signed. And so coming out of that, like exit criteria at a discovery phase, I want to know, like, are they the right fit? Do they fit our demographic? Do they fit the use case? Do they fit the type of company? And then do they actually acknowledge they have a problem and then want to solve it?
This is a really interesting framework you have, which is like, do we go into the call with our understanding of like, we think they have this problem? It almost feels like you're going in with a POV and you're trying to get them to admit to or reveal, hey, yes, this problem exists. And often if we go in with a POV, even if we're wrong, it earns us them sharing the other problem that they might have. You might have a different direction of like how you're coaching the rep either before that discovery call or like how you're teaching them to go through that framework with a customer.
One thing, Nick, about that, like I've been working with Chris Orlob for a while, and he talks about menu-based discovery and like stealing his exact words. That's like what I'm training my reps on, that if, 99% of the web is built on WordPress. We encounter it all the time. And so even if I know like, hey, you've got SuperBiz, it looks like they've got 500 employees on LinkedIn. We're talking to a senior director of marketing. They're built on WordPress. My reps are entering that discovery with a point of view, exactly, to say like, hey, I know this movie. I've seen it before. This is going to be your first time. But I'm going to tell you that normally when I talk to people that are on WordPress, they're encountering A, B, and C. Which one of those resonates the most for you? Or is it something completely different? Right. So I'm basically like outlining what pain you're going to have. You're going to either choose one of those things or say, hey, no, either I'm not, and then we're not potentially not the right fit or not ready. Or they're going to say, oh yeah, I'm really struggling with A. And then it's like, great, what's the pain behind the pain? And then can you admit that? And like, do you actually want to solve it?
So teaching discovery is extremely challenging. It can go in so many directions. It's this massive if this, then that equation, and you cannot script every direction. So let's start with the menu of pain. You have 2 or 3 common problems you might solve based on these different situations. Once your reps present those problems, how do you coach them to take the call forward from?
I think a lot of it is working backwards. Like we know where we eventually want to get in discovery, and it's for them to admit that they have a problem that needs to be solved. Right? If you think that that's the end goal, is the end part of the movie, and like what is the third act, second act, first act that gets you there? And what's unique about WebFlow versus a company like I worked for Outreach for a long time is that Outreach, we knew exactly what product we sold, who we sold it to, and what problems we solved, and we could do it. You called me at 2 a.m. and said, hey, like pitch Outreach. I could do it in my sleep. The interesting thing about WebFlow is that a website can serve so many different purposes. It can be a lead generation platform for companies. It can be an event page. It could be landing pages that they spin up. And so the reps have a very unique and interesting learning curve because they have to learn menu-based discovery for so many different competitive landscapes and competitors out there. But if we know like the core principle of Armand, you admitting that you have a problem and that you want to find out more to solve it, that's the core principle we try to hang our hat on. And then if we know that like WordPress, we're going to encounter that more than anybody else, we know based off the current customers that we've sold, why they buy WebFlow off WordPress. And I think that's like, I've been talking about this for a long time, that I think we need to do better enablement of when you started a company, you talk to either current customers or that's all you get fed is like why people buy, because it could be completely different than why marketing thinks people buy. But if we're talking to current customers and they're saying, hey, I bought because, WordPress took me too long to make changes, or I had to pay a ton of development resources, or, another option, my reps can have those three things based off their menu. They get chosen, and then always coaching from us, like, you can't stop at the first pain. You have to understand, like, once they say things are too slow, great. Like, so what? Who is that impacting? Is it impacting you? Is it impacting engineering? Is it impacting, your design team? Like, where does it stop? And then great, it's impacting engineering. So what? And it's digging down deeper and deeper, because there will be, through the coaching exercises of like discovery, that reps will write in their Salesforce notes, oh, they're on WordPress and it's too slow. Like, part of that is just tells me initially that they either didn't get to a second or third level, or they're simply not writing good enough notes in Salesforce. But that's an opportunity for me as a leader to see that and call that out, and to understand, and then call them on it, and to say, like, great, hey, you said it's taking too slow. Like, what does that mean for them? What does that mean for their partners? What does it mean for the org, the company? And getting them to dig a little bit deeper. And if they don't have those answers, they got to figure it out in the demo.
Because you talked about, okay, they should be talking to customers and understanding in the customer's words why they switched off of WordPress. Are you actually having your reps, when they onboard, go and talk to a bunch of customers? Are there specific trainings you're doing? How do you actually empower the team with this stuff?
Yeah, it's one of the interesting things about the company culture of WebFlow. I'm sure other companies do this, but every time we sign up a new company to WebFlow, we've got a Slack channel specifically for this, of the rep going in and outlining who they signed up, what they signed up with, but more importantly, why they signed up, and the competitive reasons. And so this highlights to the entire company, like, hey, I've signed up 30 Minutes to President's Club on WebFlow, and they signed up from WordPress, and here's why they signed up. And so the nice thing about us from our point of view, especially being in Slack, is that if I'm talking to, let's say, one of your competitors, right, and they're looking also at WebFlow, I can type in, like, okay, podcast, WordPress, and search it in Slack, and I can get several answers of people that have signed up from that platform and why, so I can quickly search and have things to talk to.
What you're talking about is a lot of people over-rotate on product training. This is the solution that we offer. And the first thing that we would always teach at PAVE is, this is why merit cycles suck, or this is why compensation planning is the worst exercise in the world. And if you teach your reps the before state of the infomercial, like Josh Braun oftentimes says, teach them that. Teach them how to look for that before they even know what your product does. You're going to train them to listen for the right types of problems, instead of looking for the different places they can just poke a solution in. So Sean, once they actually understand these problems that they're looking for, how did you teach your team? How do you actually roll out this discovery framework to your team?
I think it starts with any type of coaching has to start with education or awareness. So it's about teaching them, and then showing them, and then practicing with them. And so if let's say we're rolling out a brand new discovery framework, I'm brand new to a new company, right? I think part of it is the awareness. Like, here is what we should be doing, and I'm going to show you how it works. And then more importantly, it's about the practice of, let's actually run through it. And, people cringe at the words role play, but it really is just practicing that day in and day out. And I think, like, looking back at outreach, when I talked about answering a phone at 2 a.m. and being able to say it in my sleep, it's because we practice it so damn much, right? And that is, like, built into me from my Kevin Dorsey days at Snack Nation, is that's all we would do, is we would go into rooms before 8 a.m. and we would practice over and over and over and over, so that by the time we got on calls, it's like we had already gone through the toughest role plays of the day. We had already practiced it a ton. And so I think with this, whenever you want to roll out a new framework, whether it's discovery-based, demo, negotiation is a huge one. It's just about showing them or educating how to do it. And then it's running through and practicing it over and over.
Are you doing those role plays in group, like team sessions? Like, are you doing them in your team meeting, or are you doing them on one-on-ones with the rep?
One-on-ones. Yeah, I'd much rather do on one-on-ones for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think it's, people are always hesitant enough to practice it just in general. People always want to save what they're going to do and save it for the game, right? And just be like, oh no, I watched a gong call, I should be fine on this next one. But it's really about getting into that one-on-one and saying, hey, you have a tough negotiation coming up. We know that the CRO is going to be tough. Like, let's go through a couple of ways. We know we're going to hit friction here around budgets, around legal, MSA, whatever it is. And I want to practice through this a couple times with you, because also if we're going through one-on-one, I feel like it's going to be a little bit more comfortable. And then also we can just go through it super quick to do 4 or 5 iterations in a row of just that section.
Boom. Sean, amazing round 2. Unfortunately, it's not 50 minutes to President's Club. It's 30 minutes to President's Club. So we have to move to the final question. And it is the same. What is one bad habit that every sales leader should break so that all sales teams can get a little bit better?
As any sales leader or anybody that has people below you, please stop giving feedback in Slack or email. This is the tale as old as time that anything that's written can be misinterpreted, right? If your partner texts you fine, you can read that 50 different ways. I listen to a ton of times that I need to get my reps feedback. I love the voice feature on Slack, or simply calling them and giving it to them in direct. So always they can hear the inflection in my voice, the tone of my voice, knowing that I want them to get better. I'm in their corner, and that's going to do miles for them. It's going to be so much better than just, writing it in a Slack or email.
Boom. Alrighty, Nick, it is time for a 2x2 recap from this episode with Sean Gentry. What do you have for year 2?
Number 1, you've got to be maniacal about the format of the next step field in your CRM. Sean makes every deal have the following. First, the date of the next step. Second, the specific tactical next step that is happening in that deal. And third, the goal of that next step. And this makes pipe reviews far more focused on how do we get a successful outcome and less on, wait, what are you doing next? My second is when you are in one-on-ones with your reps, that is the best time to do role plays to prepare for upcoming meetings rather than doing generic role plays in the big team meeting. So do them with reps one-on-one.
Number 3, your framework to evaluate early stage deals is, do we know that there's a problem? Do they know that there's a problem? And are they willing to go on a journey with us to solve it? And then number 4, way too often, leaders are focused on evaluating the late stage deals. So sort your deals by deal size and start with the biggest deals first in your pipe reviews. Alrighty, Nick, how can people help us out?
All right, folks, if you liked this one with Sean, he was actually on this show, episode 190. So if you like the stuff you learned from him here, go back to episode 190 and give him a listen on that one. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week on the show.